A new PBS documentary follows the story of a former government pediatrician who molested Native American boys in his care on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation in Browning, Montana. The newest episode of Frontline looks at Dr. Stanley Patrick Weber. He was recently sentenced to more than 18 years in prison on several charges of sexual assault and abuse. Frontline and the Wall Street Journal partnered to investigate the decades-long failure to stop Dr. Weber. Their findings will premiere Tuesday in Predator on the Reservation. Here's a preview.
Allegations swirled around this reservation doctor for years.
When I went downstairs is when I was floored because of what I saw there. A lot of items that boys would play with.
Frontline on the Wall Street Journal investigate the government's failure to stop decades of abuse.
Why protect a pedophile? If they knew about it, why did they protect him?
Despite the warnings.
What kind of cover-up is this? And this involves a lot of people in a lot of high places.
Watch online or on air starting February 12th.
Christopher Weaver is one of two Wall Street Journal reporters and Frontline correspondents who led the investigation. He joins me on set now. Chris, thanks so much for being here. How did Dr. Weber go undetected for so long?
Well, he didn't go undetected. Almost from the beginning when he arrived in Browning, Montana in the mid-1990s, there were suspicions about him. People he worked with thought there was something weird going on with the guy's stockpile of children's toys and things like that in his basement on the reservation.
And so what did it take for the abuse to finally get the attention of the federal government?
Well, what happened in Browning is that a parent complained about a kid sleeping over at his house, and this sort of rose up the hierarchy locally. His managers there concluded he was probably molesting kids and decided to get rid of him. But instead of firing him or launching an investigation, they simply transferred him to another reservation where he continued practicing for another 21 years.
And the documentary highlighted the roles that other physicians played in uncovering Dr. Weber's actions. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
So I looked at these charts, and there weren't any girls. They were all boys. On this page, there are 14 patients, and there's one female, 1 out of 14. I kept asking myself, why would a pediatrician zero in on a population consisting of normal weight boys and teenage boys? It just seemed incomprehensible to me.
So what role did physicians like him play in the investigation and sentencing?
So that doctor is a guy named Mark Butterbrodt who complained about Dr. Weber and was convinced for years that Dr. Weber was sexually assaulting patients in his care. The Indian Health Service, the federal agency that employed both these men, repeatedly sort of did nothing in response to his claims, or maybe initiated sort of short investigations that concluded without a whole lot of legwork that really nothing was going on and they should just move on. And ultimately with that guy, what happened is instead of punishing Dr. Weber or referring it to law enforcement, they exiled the guy who was complaining about the suspected pedophile to an even more remote place, effectively as a punishment.
Wow. Well, your investigation found a pattern of, quote, problematic doctors throughout the Indian Health Service. Why is that?
I think it's a real structural challenge that the agency has been contending with for years. Basically, to run these hospitals that are often the only source of health care for the people they serve in very remote areas of the country, they have a really hard time finding doctors to staff them, which obviously you need to run a hospital. So they make compromises and hire people who might struggle to get a job anyplace else.
Well, in the documentary, the former director of the Indian Health Service explained that part of the problem is that they let a lot of things slide, to your point, in order to keep positions filled. But what needs to be done to help fix this problem of filling positions within the Indian Health Service?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to figure out what the answer to that is. The current leader of the agency, a guy named Michael Wiaki, says that, he wants his staff, he says in an interview with us, to always prioritize protecting patients over just filling positions. But where those doctors are going to come from is not, totally clear. And the agency is still trying to figure out exactly what happened under its watch with regard to Dr. Weber through an external investigation. Hopefully they'll get some answers from that.
All right. Well, it's disturbing, but it's so important that people understand the truth of what took place in this case. Christopher Weaver, Chris, thanks very much for being here.
My pleasure.